Welcome to this 4 o'clock session. My name is Cory Leonard. I am with the David M. Kennedy Center for International Studies at Brigham Young University, and we welcome you for this panel on human rights and cross-cultural religious liberty education. We'd like to get started, and let me briefly introduce our presenters, and each of them will present to you, and then hopefully we'll have time for a few questions. Our first presenter, Matius, is Executive Director of the Leimena Institute in Indonesia. He led the development of the cross-cultural religious literacy program that since 2021 has trained thousands of teachers in Indonesia on competence to strengthen peaceful multi-faith and multicultural societies. He wrote about Indonesia in the Routledge Handbook of Religious Literacy, Pluralism, and Global Engagement. Our next presenter, no stranger to the law school, is David M. Kirkham. He is serving as the Executive Director of the Geneva Office for Human Rights, as well as the President of the International Society, a professional organization for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who are global professionals. David, his professional experience has taken him to over 50 countries on 6 continents. He served as the academic director of BYU's London Center, where he organized the first human rights study abroad for the university covering 6 European countries. He was associate dean and professor of international politics and democratic studies at the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany, and director of international plans and programs, as well as director of international history at the United States Air Force Academy. Finally, Imam Ibrahim Alhassan directs the youth and gender advocacy in the office of the National Chief Imam in Ghana. He is the youth and gender advocacy director and a committee member of the Ghana Country Coordinating Mechanism of the Global Fund to Fight HIV, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. He serves as a committee member of the National Child Protection Committee at the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection, and is dedicated to the promotion of girl-child education, human rights advocacy, and interfaith dialogue. Please join me first in a warm welcome of our 3 presenters. Matius. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, first of all, to International Center for Law and Religion Studies at BYU Law School for inviting me to participate in this very important symposium. I'm very delighted to share a panel with my good friend, David Kirkham. We also share a panel in Geneva in March, and then also with my new friend from Ghana. So my name is Matius Ho. I'm Executive Director from Leimena Institute, an NGO based in Jakarta, Indonesia. So let me see if I know how to use this. Okay. So yeah, the program that I'm going to talk about today is cross-cultural religious literacy, not liberty. This is the program that we have in Indonesia. So first of all, talking about religious freedom, the Pew Research Center used 2 indicators, government restrictions and social hostilities. So here the program that we are talking about, experience from Indonesia, actually very much related to the social hostilities indicator, which basically find out how the society reacts to religious differences in a certain country. But the question for us at Leimena Institute, where we are very quite practical oriented, our question is that what can we do about it, about these social hostilities? And then in March this year, when when I was there for the 55th session on UN Human Rights Council, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said that xenophobia and discrimination on the basis of religion or belief, gender, ethnicity, and migrant status are rising to acutely disturbing levels today. And interesting, he also emphasized that to strengthen social cohesion and heighten respect, I strongly recommend effective societal initiatives. So the cross-cultural religious literacy that we are doing in Indonesia is one of the examples of this societal initiative on dealing with the xenophobia, discrimination, like that. And then he emphasized that to build societies in which expression of hatred have become socially unacceptable requires inclusive faith literacy. Now, earlier, about 3 years ago, UNESCO, in their report about the future of education, they also identified that the world appears increasingly divided and polarized. So the implication in education is that reimagining the future of education together calls for pedagogies that foster cooperation and solidarity. So it is very important to take into account the situation in the world and how we approach the education in the future. So in short, basically, the cross-cultural religious literacy program that we are doing in Indonesia through education is an inclusive faith literacy program to promote a peaceful and cohesive society that respects religious diversity. As a background, Indonesia, this is who we are. I mean, we have about, right now, actually almost 280 million people, pretty diverse, more than 1,000 ethnicities, more than 600 languages, not dialects. 16,000 islands, depending on whether you count it during a high tide or low tide. And then we have the world's largest Muslim population, but we don't have a state religion. So we have protection of religions, of all religions in our constitution. But Indonesia, as you can see, that's the demography. So 87% are Muslims. But there was a disturbing survey, several actually. I mean, for example, this one from the 2018 nationwide survey among the university, madrasa, and school teachers and students that found that more than 50%, I mean 57% of Indonesian teachers actually have intolerant tendencies. So this is a very concerning trend that we are seeing in Indonesia. So that's actually one of the motivation why we are trying to think about how we can deal with this through education and what we can do about it in a large scale. So cross-cultural religious literacy, the framework is actually quite simple. It's based on these three competencies, personal, comparative, and collaborative competency. And what are they? So personal competency is basically understanding yourself. So for example, if I'm a Christian, then I need to understand my religion well, my Christianity, and what it teaches me about relating with people who are different from me. Because in many of the data about extremism, religious extremists, oftentimes actually they don't really know their own religion. They're just being manipulated by certain maybe radical teachers like that. So understanding your own religion is very important, especially what your religion is teaching you about treating people who are different from you. But that's not enough in a religiously diverse society. We need to have another competency, which is the comparative competency, which is basically understanding the religious other. I need to be able to understand people who are different from me religiously, but I need to understand their religion from their perspective. So if I'm a Christian, I want to understand Muslims in Indonesia, I shouldn't just go about and then buy a book from a Christian author talking about Islam, for example, because first, it may not be accurate because the person doesn't know what he's talking about. And then secondly, they may be talking about bad things about Islam, for example. I need to go out to talk to the Muslim scholars. I mean, like my mentor here, Dr. Alwi Shihab, who actually spoke yesterday. And then I ask him or them about Islam and let them teach me about Islam. But if we just stop on those two competencies, we may have a very good interfaith dialogue. We may actually end up with having a good department of comparative religious study, nothing wrong about it. But then you may just stop there. You know, that's where sometimes interfaith dialogue becomes maybe not so effective sometimes at a certain point, because maybe you have a very good dialogue, but then after you leave the room, and then you still have these prejudice, stereotypes against one another. So the third competency that we need to have is actually how we can collaborate with people who are different from us. Religiously, on the faith, we have a different faith, but we can collaborate. But we understand that if we can collaborate, doesn't mean that we become all the same. We will have differences and we will remain different on certain things. But we need to be able to collaborate. And that's where actually we build the trust, and that's where we build learn to respect one another differences. So it's very important to have these three competencies. So the whole idea actually of cross-cultural religious literacy is that how we can move toward multi-faith collaboration, because in collaboration we believe that's where we build the trust. And then there have been numerous research showing that actually trust building and collaboration they are very highly correlated, because with a lot of trust you can collaborate with other people, and then the more you collaborate you also build more trust. So that's the kind of cycle that we are looking at. But we know that the challenges to multi-faith collaboration and trust building are, there are many challenges, but among them, the primary challenges are prejudice and negative stereotypes. How do you deal with that? So that's why we take into account, for example, the theory from a study from Gordon Allport, a very well-respected social psychologist, where he developed an approach. It was already many decades ago, but it's still very relevant until today. It's called intergroup contact theory. So there are certain elements from that theory that we also incorporate in this program, because we understand that even though the name is cross-cultural religious literacy, but it's actually not a program about trying to produce an expert on religion, but how we deal with the prejudice and negative stereotypes. So the program is that we develop a program as a training program for primary, secondary, or K-12 madrasa and school teachers. Most of the teachers in our program are year 1 to 12. So we first start with a basic course, and then we have upgrading or more advanced courses. So we are partnering with a number of organizations. We begin in 2021. Right now we are partnering with more than 30 organizations, most of them religious and education institutions, but we are also working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Law and Human Rights. So the basic course actually is an introduction. It's online 5 days with the Zoom and learning management system. We talk about the concept of CCRL, and there's a course on Islam taught by Muslim scholars, Christianity by pastors, Judaism by Jewish scholars, and so on and so forth. Dr. Alwis Yap is one of our instructors as well, and Rabbi David Saperstein, I saw him here in the symposium. He's also teaching the session on Judaism. So within 2.5 years, we are quite surprised because we get a lot of response. We actually reached more than 10,000 teachers from pretty much all over Indonesia, 37 out of 38 provinces in Indonesia. We have a criteria for graduation, so we have 8,500 teachers graduated from the program. We have more female, even though it was not engineered like that, but apparently there are more female teachers joining our program as well. So after they graduate the basic course, we offer them additional advanced courses like online upgrading courses, and then we also have international webinars where we try to educate a broader public audience about this concept. So right now our webinars usually attended by more than 2,000 people. We also develop a digital library, textbooks, ebooks, and then videos of the testimony, and also example of how the teachers implement the concept in their classroom, and then video and audio podcasts for all the teachers so that they can continuously learn and then access the library freely. I want to talk a little bit about this. One of the advanced courses that we offer to them, which is very fascinating, is actually a workshop where we have a 3 days in-person meeting. We were able to do this after the COVID pandemic was over. So this is one of the workshops that we do where we have Muslim and Christian teachers learning together. This is a workshop that we are doing with the Ministry of Law and Human Rights. We partner with them. Since we began with the madrasa teachers, with the Muslim teachers, but starting last year, we also began introducing the program for the Christian teachers. And then this year, this week, we just finished our first class with the Buddhist teacher. Next week, we'll do our first class for the Hindu teachers, and December with the Confucianist teachers. So next year, I think we'll have all the recognized religion in Indonesia in our program as well. So in the workshop, we train the teachers on how they can try to integrate the principles of cross-cultural religious literacy into their lesson plans so that they can teach the students in the classroom. We are not trying to create a new curriculum. We simply ask them we help them, for example, a teacher from madrasa on Quran and Hadith. Then the teacher will actually learn how to integrate these principles into the course of Quran and Hadith that he's teaching. So for example, right now we have a math teacher who is able to integrate these principles into the math course using statistics, engaging the students in discussion about religious tolerance, interfaith relation, like that. So it's very fascinating to see how they innovate, these teachers. They are very creative, they are extremely smart. So in the workshop, they're able to work together. Now we have teachers from different religions. They're able to ask one another religion. So that's where you help them to go beyond the prejudice, the stereotype barrier. We also help them to visit. We bring them in the workshop to visit different religious worship places so that they have an experience. For example, many of the Christians have never been to a mosque. Maybe they are afraid. Or the madrasa, the Muslim teachers have never been to a church. So we accompany them, and that's usually a very eye-opening experience for them. So at the end of the workshop, we encourage the teachers, can you send us video on how you use the lesson plan and teach in the classroom? We don't know what to expect because we know that taking video in the classroom is very difficult. You may have to ask permission for the parents or things like that. And then you need to ask a colleague to take video of you teaching. But we are very surprised. We now already have hundreds of teachers who already taken these workshops. And in average, about 70% of the teachers actually voluntarily send us the video of how they teach in the classroom. So now we have hundreds of examples of lesson plans and videos of how they teach in the classroom. And we are incorporating them into our digital library so that more teachers can learn from one another as well. So this is one of the examples. She's actually a teacher of Quran and Hadith in a madrasa in Central Java, and she talked about how she used the lesson plan in the classroom, and then she brought her students to visit a Hindu temple to learn about Hindu from the guardian of the Hindu temple there. So I'm not going to go through this one, but basically this is a project that a Christian school, the teacher who graduated from our program earlier this year, he took the initiative talking to a teacher from a madrasa because they were both in our workshop together. And then they worked out a program where the Christian school brought the student leaders to visit the madrasa. And that was the first time for both the Christian school and the madrasa. And then I think 1-2 months later, it was the madrasa who brought the students to visit the Christian schools. Now they are talking about more programs to do, like maybe playing basketball together, things like that. And that actually, the video that I didn't have the time to show you, inspired a teacher from this region, this island in Maluku. She's a principal of a Christian school in Maluku. Maluku had a very bloody conflict between Muslim and Christians in early 2000, where thousands of people actually died because of the conflict. So the situation between Muslim and Christians is still very tense. But the principal of the Christian school got the idea from the video. She returned from our conference to Maluku, and then she actually talked to a principal of a Muslim school, and then they made a declaration together as a sisterhood schools, basically. So now they already signed an MOU on how to work together. Maybe sometimes the teacher from the Islamic school will teach in the Christian schools, and so on and so forth. So this actually show a new example on how peacemaking, I think, related to our theme today. So I think I'll close that there. And we also basically we began doing an international, I need to mention this because the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, BYU, actually co-sponsored together with us the International Conference on Cross-Cultural Religious Literacy that we began doing last year with with the Ministry of Law and Human Rights. Last July this year, we did it, hosted together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, because together with the ICLRS BYU and the Indonesian government, we want to see how we can share this experience to other people in the world. So hopefully this can be a blessing to other people as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matius. Now we will hear from David M. Kirkham.
Well, thank you. It's really a joy to be here. I see familiar faces and a lot of unfamiliar faces, and it just thrills me, and it thrills me to be on a program with Matius and Ibrahim. At first, when I saw that Matius and I were on the same program, I thought, well, that's a coincidence because we were just on the same program in Geneva. But then as I listened to him and the more I've gotten to know him, I think it's not much coincidence at all, because we are in so much harmony. Geneva Office for Human Rights Education, the Leimena Institute, we see things so much in the same way. I'm quite inspired by really Matius's comments today. We both see ourselves as being a social initiative, in his words, towards social cohesion. We see education is the key, and I think his model for personal, comparative, and collaborative competencies is a strong model for peace. When I was the director of the BYU London Center, we used to teach a class in religious liberty in the British Isles, and we would take our students to almost every religion that we possibly could. So we went to the Sikhs and the Muslims and the Jews and the Hindus and Baha'is, and at the end of the semester, one of my final exam questions to my students was always, what has your exposure to other religions done to your own religious conviction? And the answer was almost always the same. My students from that gained greater respect and appreciation for what other religious people were doing, to no harm to their own religious convictions, which were strengthened as they watched other people operate in their own religions and worship in their own ways. So again, I think we see education is a key to respect of religious freedom, respect, in our case, to human rights, recognition of those things. And as that respect increases, then peace is the inevitable result. Now, I'm not going to tell you the story, but it's a good story, so if anybody wants to hear a good story, grab me afterwards. But in a nutshell, many years ago, I had an exchange with the man who picked up our garbage. And I was reading a book on constitutional history, and he asked me what it was, and we had a discussion about constitutional history in the United States, and I was amazed at his understanding of the development of constitutionalism. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if everybody in society could talk about an issue like constitutionalism? Well, now I transfer that to discussions on human rights. And I feel like, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone in the world could have a good understanding of just what it is, what human rights are? Well, the key to that is education, of course. I'm going to share just a brief video that helps us understand what might happen if every child in the world had some basic understanding in his heart, in her mind, of what human rights constitutes.
These two second graders teaching us all a powerful lesson, our Persons of the Week. Tonight, the powerful moment and the lesson on the playground. Mason and Amira are second graders at Mann Elementary School in Philadelphia. Amira believed she'd been bullied. She heard someone talking about her, picking on her, and Mason with moving words for her. Just listen.
Don't listen to a guy that called you dumb. Listen to yourself. Ignore this guy, whoever it is. Just stop talking to people that calls you dumb.
Tell her what she is.
You are smart. Look, you're smart. You're such a nice friend.
Such a nice friend, she says. Mason is just 7, so is Amira. Mason taking Amira's hand.
Do you want to go play with him? Go ahead.
Okay.
A lot of what we do in second grade is talking about finding forgiveness in our hearts, and I think it meant a lot more to her that it was coming from him, her peer, than it did when I was saying it to her.
And right here tonight, those two 7-year-olds, Mason and Amira.
I want to help people, not be mean to people. No. It made me feel happy and warm inside. If someone's being mean to you, that can really hurt your feelings, and it did. But Mason helped me.
And so we choose Mason and Amira. Don't listen to him, listen to yourself, he said.
So this is what we think human rights education can do for children. This is not our program. I wish we could claim it, but we get anecdotes similar to this as a result of the human rights education that we're seeing start to spread throughout the world. There's a lot of darkness in the world today. I'm just going to give quick examples. Human trafficking. As many as 50 million victims of modern slavery in 2022, 46% trafficking victims women, 19% girls. Just making the macro point. Religious persecution, harassment of religious groups reported in more than 90% of countries. We've heard similar statistics about that throughout this program, including the last plenary session. Ranges from verbal abuse to physical violence, even killings, motivated at least in part by religious identities. So when we look at this darkness in the world today, I like to think of this quote from the Mormon founder, Latter-day Saint, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints founder, Joseph Smith, who said, "We should waste and wear out our lives in bringing to light all the hidden things of darkness." This was his response to a period of intense persecution against the church. Well, the premises today that I'm going to share, and I'm going to try and do this pretty quickly because I want to make sure Ibrahim gets his full time. And by the way, that is a coincidence. Judy and I just happened to be in Ghana a few weeks ago working with Ibrahim's office. So, premises, these abuses cry out in the minds of good people for redress. Modern human rights agenda helps bring light to all the hidden things of darkness. Faith communities play a key role in bringing light to darkness and require human rights protection to fulfill their role. It's only by protecting freedom of religion, thought, conscience, and belief for everyone, including for non-theists, that a belief community can, in the long run, protect itself. This is something I learned quite a few years ago. There's no way to get religious freedom for just your religion. In the long run, it will fail. The only way it works is to intently and sincerely work for freedom of thought, belief, religion for everyone. And promotion of human rights, similarly, in general, is one of the best ways to protect freedom of religion or belief in particular. That's our premise with regard to the Geneva Office for Human Rights Education. We start with that assumption, and then because other people will have other priorities among human rights, but when they look at the entire package and feel its integration, then religious freedom will be one of those that is protected. Education is one of the best means. I've said that. Again, in the interest of time, won't go through this, but Article 18 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is where this comes, where what we base that approach on with regard to religious freedom. So what's the need? Human rights violations will remain a persistent global problem, including persecution of religion, unless children and youth understand them, receive human rights education. They need to be inspired to care and make the changes necessary for peace in the world. What's the mandate? Well, this comes from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Every individual and every organ of society shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. In 2004, the General Assembly of the United Nations proclaimed the World Program for Human Rights Education to advance the implementation of human rights education programs in all sectors. And virtually every country in the world has signed up to this. How and by whom? Well, I use this quote from the Council of Europe that suggests it can be done in a variety of ways. Since 1948, they say a huge quantity and variety of work has been done. It's being done in the interest of human rights education. That there are many ways of doing human rights education is as it should be, because individuals view the world differently. Educators work in different situations, and different organizations and public bodies have differing concerns. Thus, while the principles are the same, the practice may vary. So we are not in competition with any other human rights education program in the world. We are hoping to collaborate. I'm looking for the day when I'm on the program with Matius, and when he puts up his more than 30 collaborators, that Go HRE is up there with our logo with one of those. Who are we? Well, again, we are headquartered in Geneva, but we now have offices in Geneva, the Philippines, Africa, Central America, Pacific Islands, United States. We're expanding. We expect to be in 2 or 3 other countries by the end of this year. We're an affiliate of the David M. Kennedy Center for International Studies at BYU here, which again, coincidentally, Cory is the associate director of that center. And we receive financial support from the Humanitarian Services of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The mission of Go HRE is to teach children and youth about human rights, about their individual worth, and at the same time foster a culture that values human dignity, which includes that fundamental human right of freedom of religion or belief. The curriculum that comes from our program promotes human dignity through teaching these children about human rights and their corresponding responsibilities. So what do we bring? We bring human rights education that is simple, it's directed at children and adolescents, interactive. The children themselves, the students, have to take part in the program. They're given, for example, a talking stick. When they hold the talking stick, they speak. Everybody else is required to listen. And it gives the child a sense of importance. It's inexpensive, it's non-sectarian and apolitical. It's adaptable to any culture, pretty much anywhere in the world. We focus on fundamental values. We stay away from extreme interpretations. We are respectful of parents and local cultures. It's based on the Universal Declaration and on the Convention of the Rights of the Child. It has the importance of freedom of religion or belief as a basic assumption, and it's implemented and managed by host countries, and it is sustainable.
Who am I? I am a person, I am me. I am a value, I am me. I am me, I am me. I have a right to be accepted everywhere. As a person, I have a name, I have a name, I have a name.
I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it. This started in Geneva about 8 years ago. There was a couple there that were human rights advocates, former director of the David M. Kennedy Center. He and his wife looked around at Geneva at human rights education programs. They noticed a gap, and well, a couple of gaps. One is that most of these education programs are directed at university students or adults. Few were directed towards children and youth. And the other one is they did notice that there was a marked absence of teaching about religious freedom. Sometimes it was dropped entirely from some curricula. Others were not, just didn't give it full credit. And so, long story short, a curriculum was developed that now is able to meet those gaps. It's based, as I said, on the Universal Declaration and Convention on the Rights of the Child. And the vision is to reach children and youth, foster that culture that respects human rights and responsibilities, and then to build bridges in sort of the collaborative way that Matius was just talking about. We find that teaching human rights positively influences the self-esteem of children, their attitudes, and their behaviors. I was told not that long ago from the principal of one school about a young boy who was a bully on the playground. And the students had been having these lessons, and they called him out and they said, you're in violation of our human rights. He went in before the principal and he said, I don't want to be that boy anymore. We're starting to see these kinds of things. The Collega lesson topics, you can see, focuses on those most fundamental of human rights that all peoples everywhere enjoy and agree on. Every religion, every good non-religious person seems to have these same core values in the end. Really, truly, we try to be focused on the universal. Each Collega lesson includes activities like singing, like the song you just heard. It includes games. It includes these kinds of things that are interactive and yet at the same time has a serious point. And it has unusual homework where they have to make some kind of application of whatever human right that they've learned about. So they might be asked to make a new friend, watch someone who's sitting alone, spend some time talking to them. Tell a friend or someone about your favorite human right, or find somebody who has different beliefs than you and listen to them sincerely. Practice doing kind things for someone in your family. Right now, we have manuals in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. I've got one of the English ones here with me today, and they are eventually can be made available in other countries, other languages. Here's that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that Hannah Smith was referring to in the last session, and I want to say it even though our time is short. Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and small, so small they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such as are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks understanding of human rights. If they don't have meaning close to home, they don't have meaning anywhere. So we focus on the child's world. The child's who are the significant others of the child, classmates and friends, parents, brothers and sisters, neighbors, teachers, and other people they know who may be different than they are. We've had pilot programs going on in the Philippines. The original pilot reached about 680,000. The government in the Philippines has basically got the final MOA on their desk. It's been through the lawyers on both sides, and we expect signing any day that will take this into the public schools of the Philippines and reach as many as 28 million children. Guatemala, basically the same thing, and we worked with their government for a long time to get a better manual than we had in Spanish. And even though it felt a little tedious to us at times, we came away from working with their government with something much better that we can share with other Spanish-speaking countries. Fiji, my wife and I were just there and have had, and again, the government has expressed a willingness and interest in signing a memorandum of agreement. The pilot schools have had successful run with that there. Ghana, we started differently. We started at the grassroots level, working in individual schools. We'll never do that again. But at the same time, it's because now we find ourselves having to come back around now to the central government anyway. And so it's better to get this more quickly into the hands of the local authorities. So those are the countries we've been in. These are on tap. I think we'll be in Mexico by the end of the year. Tonga, the pilots are already going. And also, I think very close to having programs running in Peru and Guyana. So anyway. So to sum up, much darkness in the world, suffering in the world today. All religions and belief systems as based on honest seeking for truth and love for humankind, bring light to the darkness and solace to the sufferer. Religion and belief must be protected as a fundamental human rights in order for religions to be able to fulfill this role. Power of religion and belief to enlighten and do good is enhanced when integrated with protection and propagation of other fundamental human rights, and this protection and propagation is readily executed through education. And I want to end with a very short clip from Ghana. This is from our program. Well, actually, Philippines first.
Shine.
and this one from Ghana.
Who am I? I am a person. I am me. I am a value. I am me. I am me. I am me. I have a right to be accepted everywhere. As a person, I have a name. I have a name. I have a name.
Thank you very much.
Imam Alhassan, please.
Okay. Good evening. Oh, it's still afternoon, right? Okay. I think Mr. David and Mr. Matius have done all my job for me. So I just have to touch on certain places and I'm done. And wherever you see I skip, that means they've already talked about it. So, okay. First, my presentation is structured in the following. And I think the definition, human rights, education, the analysis, the culture, cross-cultural religious liberty education, analysis, recommendation, and the conclusion. I give you a greetings of peace, and then it is most humbling to be part of this august occasion. And I am proud to be here, and I'm going to talk on my presentation is going to be on a contextualized base, not, I'm not going to look at definitions and what people say. I'm going to try to talk in an opinionated aspect. And what I've seen interacting with people. First, they've already talked about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I'm not going to talk about that. And in Ghana, the Chapter 5 of the 1992 Constitution also gives us the human rights and the freedom to religion. And the Quran, 1770, we have dignified the children of Adam. That is period, children of Adam. They didn't say whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, whoever. And on this, we believe that that is all about human rights. And we work the definition of the Quran as a youth and gender activism. The foundation of Islam is built on education. Every education is acceptable, provided it is beneficial. That's why in the Quran, the first chapter, it says, Iqra, read. You can't read if you don't learn. So, and also the Prophet also said, knowledge is obligatory upon all gender. And also seeking knowledge is perpetual, from cradle to grave. You have no time to say, I'm not studying. All time is for studies. And it's obligatory to seek knowledge anywhere. Even in one hadith, he said, even if you have to travel to China, not necessarily going to China, but he's trying to say how important religion education is. And looking at the cross-cultural education, the right to freedom of religion has been a fundamental human right in Ghana since 1969. And the Article 21, subsection 1C of the 1990 Constitution also talks about the right to practice and manifest any religion that you like. So if you have the right to manifest, and Ghana is a secular country, and if you are supposed to manifest any religion that you like, that means we have to be together. And there's no compulsion in religion also in the Quran, it says. And today, this is the third time I'm repeating this verse. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam upheld tolerance and gave residents of Medina the freedom to choice or to choose their religion. So in Ghana is the same that we practice. You have the right to practice any religion you have. And if you are a Muslim in Ghana, the Quran also said you have no right to oppress anybody. How do we achieve a sustainable human rights practices, cross-cultural education? This morning we've been talking about peace, and all of the cross-cultural education and the human rights is gearing towards achieving the peace that we are all looking for. And to do that, we need to sustain it. We always have it, at the end we have problems. And to my opinion, I think coming from the youth, the first that we have to do is the youth that we have to look at through education, mentorship, and economic growth, because every child that you give education and you don't give the economic power is easily influenced by anyone. And I think most of the time we talk about the youth, but we don't talk about those who are supposed to implement the mentorship. They are also to be held responsible, because if you are given a responsible to mentor a child, then at the end of it, what do you do? Whatever you impact in the child is what is going to be manifested into the world. If you impact negative, we receive negative. If you impact positive, that's what we receive. And to whom much is given, much is expected. If you are a scholar, in the Islamic perspective, the virtue of a scholar over a worshipper is like the superiority of a moon over the star. If God or Allah is giving you this power to be superior over like somebody who is a worshipper, as a scholar, then imagine what is expected of you. You have no right to fail. And every aspect of your life is worship as a leader. Because in Surah Al-Bayyinah, it said, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. It said the order to you is to worship and to be sincere in worshiping, which means if you're a leader and you are leading people, you must do it right and you must be sincere in doing it. You have no right to fail. And like I said, I'm not going to talk much. The sincerity is there. You have to apply it. And sitting with a scholar too is very important, the mentorship that I'm talking about. There's one hadith the Prophet said, if you sit with a person who is selling a perfume, at the end of it, if you don't get the gift of a perfume, even you live there, you will be smelling of the perfume. That means if you sit with a scholar, at the end of it, you benefit something from that scholar. And there's one saying that sitting with a scholar in a minute is better than of your worship of 70 years, which means the benefit that you are going to get from it is what is much important. That is measured to the 70 years of your worship. And the second I'm looking at is our homes. That is where we should look at. It's very, very important. If in my house I'm able to raise my children in the right way, to understand what religious peace building is, tolerance, respect, acceptance is, and you do that same in your house, at the end of it, all our families coming together. Imagine the kind of world we are going to have. The world is going to be peaceful. And if you train a child, it's like you have engraving on a stone. Whatever you put in the child, it goes into their mind and in their heart, and it stays forever. There's one scholar who says, educate a child, it's like engraving a stone. That's Sheikh Ibrahim from Senegal. Okay, then I have some recommendations here. First, I think the schools to consider human rights education and cross-cultural religious education as part of the curriculum, not only at the highest level of the education ladder, even from the lower level. Because mostly, unless I didn't know about all of human rights and all that, until I am doing my first master's degrees in 2017, because I was not taught about it all. But when I started learning human rights, I realized that they were teaching me then, but I didn't know I was learning human rights. And religious institutions to consider true formal classroom education and informal, like worship gathering. We have to be talking about it, like example on Fridays at the sermons, we have to be talking about human rights. And that is what we are doing in Ghana. And we are working with CDN, Community Development Network, which we try to go to madrasas to talk to them about human dignity. And when I go there, when I try to talk to them, start talking, I don't quote anybody or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I just start talking. Then when I start quoting, then they will ask me, why? This one, it seems it's in the Quran. This one is in the Hadith. And I say, yes, they are all the same, but quoted from different books. So they realized that they are already learning it, but they didn't know that it's a universal education that they are learning. Youth empowerment through mentorship, like I said, and economic growth. Our home should also be the first place where human rights and culture, cross-cultural education are taught. Conclusion. I think I don't have to, I've talked much about it, and the conclusion says it all. I have to borrow this from my boss. He normally likes saying something. It is my conviction that if the concept is actively applied, in the end, we will strategically position the response to the challenges of contemporary societies. This way, the world at all times stand for unity instead of division, love instead of hatred, reconciliation instead of aggression, forgiveness instead of vindictiveness, liberty instead of tyranny, and excellence instead of mediocrity. And I end here, and thank you very much for listening. And I leave you with peace.
Thank you very much. We have 4 minutes to spare, so we have time for just a few questions. Raise your hand, and I'd be happy to restate it for our panel if you'd like to make it to the panel in general or to someone in particular. Are there any questions? Please.
There's a lot of talk about youth and children, and I love it. So is there effort devoted to the older generation, or just focus on the youth?
So the question is about the focus of human rights education. Is it just for youth and children, or is there a role for older persons?
Of course, there's a role for older persons. I'm an older person, and I'm learning more and more about human rights every day. But our office is particularly focused on youth and children because that's what was missing. I was a university professor teaching human rights before. It would have been nice if some of my students had had that foundation when they were 5, 6, 8, 12 years old.
Well, for the cross-cultural religious literacy program that we are doing in Indonesia, we actually train the teachers. We don't directly train or teach the students. So of the 9,000 teachers that we've graduated from our program, 2/3 of them 40 years and younger, but some of them actually 4 years above. So I think our teachers may be in between the old and the young. So thanks.
Thank you.
Actually, that was the right answer. We also only train teachers and trainers, and they have often expressed that their eyes have been opened in a significant way. So.
Imam?
Yes. In Ghana, normally at the office of the National Chief Imam in the National Mosque, at the end of every month, we have a forum for the elderly that comes in for the teaching. But mostly, the reason we concentrate on the children is that we are going to do what I normally call revolution. Because every elderly person was once a child. And if we are able to get all the children in future, we are imagining what we will get. So that's mainly why we mainly focus on children, but we also do focus on the elderly. Thank you.
Yes, please, sir.
So mine is a quick plea, if you like. I've been privileged to work with the OHRE on a couple of projects. Thank you very much. So I worked with them on a couple of projects where parents came in with their kids. And the parents, as I interacted with them, had put up some defensive mechanism, because once you talk about human rights, they think you are raising antagonists. And so I would passionately and humbly appeal that you also look at the parents. And once they understood the content, they felt like, oh, this is rather in to help us parents and the kids be on the same page, rather than raising antagonists. So it's the lack of knowledge that was making them think that the collegia was going to raise some rebellious kids, if you like, who would understand their rights and begin to push back on certain things. But once it was well established, they embraced it. And they marveled even at what the kids had learned, because there were breakout sections and then we reconvened. And the kids shared some thoughts, which they appreciated a lot. So I would appeal to you in your efforts to educate the kids. Don't leave the elderly out of the equation, because they all have to be on the same page.
Yes,
Totally agree.
okay. I want to emphasize on what you said, because when the Community Development Network came to Ghana and we were going into the Muslim community specifically, I realized what you said, and I could see the problem we were going to have. So we first had to engage the stakeholders, like the chiefs, the imams, and the parents. We had a meeting together with them. Then we briefed them on what we had a beautiful soul, Tiffany. Yeah, she's a beautiful soul. So she talked to them, and they understood it, and they opened the gate for us. So we were freely operating in the communities without any. I accept what you are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Time for one more question. It's our final question. Please, I'll bring you the microphone.
Mine is not a question, just a comment. I'm also from Ghana, and just want to re-emphasize the tolerance that we have among the religions in Ghana. In the first place, the president is a Christian, and the vice president is a Muslim. I'm a stake president for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've participated in programs where the chief imam and his representatives have come to the church headquarters in West Africa. And you can see that relationship that we have there. On Muslim holidays, in some areas where stake centers are open to our brothers and sisters from the Islamic religion to come and pray there and do whatever they have to do. So I just wanted to add this, that there's powerful relationship and tolerance among all the religions in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking our panel for today's comments and presentations.